If you remember some 2 days ago or so, we read about Jesus' frustration against the Jews. He was frustrated and was telling them that they would die in their sin because they refused to accept his words, they refused to accept him as the face of the Father. So out of frustration, out of anger, was upset, annoyed, tells them, you're going to die in your sin. You are of this world and you die in this world of sin. You don't know me because I come from above. That was the frustration of Jesus. But today we read about the frustration of the Jews themselves against Jesus. And in their frustration, they actually go to some extreme in a way, because they are accusing Jesus of, or they are saying Jesus is possessed. This is what they've said. Now we know that you have a demon. Jesus has a demon. Now we know that you have a demon. Why are they saying this? Because he continues to talk about himself as the face of the Father and someone sent by the Father to come and accomplish a mission. And in his speech, in his teaching, he talks about having been there even before the prophets, even before Abraham. And they are saying, but you are not even 50 yet. In other words, ndiwo mwana chabewe. Amenana babwa zuo kanizana kaniliti. And you are saying you have seen Abraham. You have not seen Abraham. Isaiah says, before Abraham was, I am. There's something deep in that statement, something theological that maybe the Pharisees and the Jews are not able to see because of their stubbornness. They have chosen not to see what Jesus is trying to communicate in statements like, before Abraham was, I am. That he has existed from eternity. Before the prophets came, before Abraham, their father, and many other people that came after Abraham, before all those existed, Jesus was, or Jesus is, he puts it in the present, to tell them that he actually doesn't have a beginning of his existence. It is infinite. It is eternal. And because these people are now so frustrated and they are very sure that he has a demon, they have made up their mind to stone him. These Jews who are refusing to understand what Jesus is explaining, in a way, could be you and I. In many ways, we too have refused to accept and understand what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a follower of Christ, what it means to have Jesus in your life, what it means to belong to a church. Especially when the life of discipleship goes against our own beliefs, goes against our own lifestyle. Because as a human being, sometimes there's something that you want to do, but it's not always that particular thing that you want to do would align with what is correct or would align with the gospel. But in your own stubbornness, you still want to go ahead and do that. That stubbornness, in our case, we can call it spiritual stubbornness, is what can make one miss salvation. And Jesus is explaining himself and all these things to these people because he doesn't want them to miss salvation. He wants them to accept and understand who he is, create a link with them or a relationship with them, so that as he is lifted up into heaven, he is lifted up with them. He doesn't want them to die in that sin. In our own spiritual stubbornness, we would miss that opportunity of being lifted up with Jesus up into heaven, because we just want to promote our own thinking and our own way of doing things. So instead of accusing Jesus of being possessed, maybe we should point a finger at ourselves and say, we have a demon ourselves, the demon of stubbornness. A demon of stubbornness which can enter anyone, which anyone can have. Jesus is challenging the Pharisees and their stubbornness. I think the challenge that is posing to them could also be coming to us, because in many ways we are also stubborn in our own sinfulness, in our own way of thinking, in our own way of doing things. And it is important for us today to reflect on that spiritual stubbornness, because if we don't change our ways and align ourselves with what is authentic, what is true, and what is fundamentally true, not just what we believe is true, but what is fundamentally and essentially true. If we don't align ourselves with that, then we too could die in that sin. Amen.